John's on his way.
You're the cantor?
I am the cantor, that's right. Cantor David Perper. Good morning. Shabbat Shalom.
You need help singing.
Let him loose. Thanks, Jacob.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning. It looks like the snow is pouring down, gently falling down on the ground, and that is, you know what, in a sense, something that is quite beautiful when we look outside. Each one of these snowflakes is particularly precious, that they're unique in all the world, and we celebrate every single one of them. And, you know, each week we have B'nai Mitzvah that come and stand before the Torah and become Bar Mitzvah. And each one of them is precious and unique as well. But lying underneath that surface is what we can find as springtime laying dormant. In just moments, you know, weeks, maybe a month from now, flowers will be emerging from the soil. with the promise of a new spring. And in every one of our young people, we see that as well. And so we celebrate it together, and we celebrate it this morning as Colin becomes a bar mitzvah. Colin is truly a gentleman. We have a lot to celebrate here this morning. So I'm going to invite you to follow along in our service. Some of you may have a blue siddur. If you don't, you can find them at the back of our sanctuary so that you can follow along in our service. We are turning to page 74, where you'll find the prayer Ma Tovu, and how good are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. We can look upon our community, we can look upon our families and say how good and how beautiful it truly is. Please join us in the singing of Ma Tovu on page 74.
Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Va'ani berov chastecha, avo veitecha, eshtacha ve'elecha al kodshecha, be'yiratecha, ma tovu, ma tovu, ma tovu. Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Adonai ahavti me'on beitecha, umekom mishkan kevodecha, mishkan kevodecha. Va'ani eshtachaveh ve'echra evrecha lifnei Adonai osi ma tovu, ma tovu, ma tovu. Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Va'ani tefilati lecha, Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chasdecha, Elohim berov chasdecha, Aneni be'emet yishecha ma tovu, ma tovu, ma tovu. Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
Moments ago, an ancient and beautiful tradition took place where Colin had the talit of tradition, the beautiful prayer shawl that is on his shoulders, placed on his shoulders by his grandparents. It's a reminder of the values that have been so lovingly passed from generation to generation, carried on the shoulders of your ancestors, Colin, right up until this very moment, where you now have them placed on your shoulders. And in our Siddur, on page 88, in our prayer book on page 88, there's a text that reminds us that when we fulfill certain obligations and take on new adult responsibilities, there's not only a reward in that it brings sustenance and goodness to others, but there's an intrinsic goodness to them that is in itself rewarding. And so we turn to page 88, and we have the honor of hearing Colin read all of these obligations without measure, whose reward too is without measure.
These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's mother and father, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study, morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all.
Because it leads to them all. We are going to turn now to page 94 for Baruch She'amar.
Baruch she'amar v'haya olam, Baruch hu, Baruch oseh v'reshit, Baruch omer ve'oseh, Baruch gozer u'mekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch mishalem sachar tov l're'ah, Baruch chai la'ad, v'kayam la'netzach, Baruch bodeh u'matzil, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Ata Adonai, Melech Mehulal Batishbachot.
We continue now on page 106. That's page 106 with the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. Bechayechon uve'yom echon uvechei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imeru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'ale v'yithala shemei dekudesha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata Da'amiran be'alma ve'imeru. Amen.
We now rise together as we turn to page 108 for the call to worship.
Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach, Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed.
We continue in the Hebrew on page 110.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, yotzer or uvarei choshech, osei shalom uvarei hakol, hameir la'aretz, veladarim aleha, berachamim uftuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid, ma'aseh vereshi, ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam bechochma asita, male'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha, titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei or she'asita, yifa'arucha selah, or chadash al tzion ta'ir, benezkeh hulanu mechera le'oro, baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot.
We turn now to page 112, where we find a prayer that reminds us of all the love that God holds for each and every one of us. You know, Colin, when you look out at your community, at your family and friends, and you can see in the eyes of all of them the pride and the affection that they feel towards you, that's how we experience God's love in this world. And it's good to be reminded that you're surrounded by those who truly love you. So we read now in the English on page 112.
How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears, whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Focus our minds on your mitzvot. Unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy.
Let's read together. Gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth, and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love.
Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael ba'ahava.
Praise
Amen.
be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. We continue now with the Shema, which can be found, the watchword of our faith, which can be found on page 114.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchuto le'olam va'ed. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever.
We sing, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue now with Ve'ahavta on page 116.
Ve'yahaveta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha ve'hayu hadevarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha vidibarta bam bishivtecha bevetecha uvlechtecha vaderech uvshochbecha uvikumecha ukishartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchetavtam al mezuzot betecha uvish arecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lechem le'elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away. Recite when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and be holy to your God. I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai, your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet.
We are going to continue now in our service on page 121, reading responsively.
The eternal truth is that you are God and there is none else.
May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice.
Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks.
Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore.
You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart.
The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asked God?
We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy.
Praise to God Most High.
Blessed is God and deserving of blessing.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef eleh. Shira chadasha shibechu ge'ulim, leshimecha al sefat hayam, yachad kulam hodu, vehimlichu ve'ameru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Tzur Yisrael, kum ha'bezrat Yisrael, ufedeichinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai tzevot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. Baruch ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
We now rise as we turn to the tefillah, which can be found on page 124.
Adonai sefatzai tiftach ufi agidei ilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chatzei Avot V'imahot, U'mevi Ge'ula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Be'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai Mechaye hakol. Atah Rav le'hoshia Mechalkel chayim bechesed. Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim verofei cholim. Umatir asurim, umekayem emunato li'nei afar, micha mocha ba'al gevurot, umido melach, melech meimid, umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah l'hachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye Hakol.
We continue now reading responsively on page 129.
You are the door that beckons me in. Peeking around the doorframe, I begin to enter into your glory.
You move me forward, O Eternal, to step beyond self-made boundaries. Lift my foot over the threshold that I might abide with you.
In the house of the Eternal, I found my questions waiting to be posed. They fill me with wonder.
Sit with me, eternal teacher. Encourage my seeking. As I fill my hours with your mitzvot, so shall I be filled.
Send me through your doors, stretching up to honor your name, sharing out this wonder, enriching myself in the giving. Baruch atah Adonai noteah b'dochenu chaye olam.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מה אדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. We continue now on page 132. Those who keep Shabbat by calling it a delight will rejoice in your realm. The people that hallows Shabbat will delight in your goodness. For being pleased with the seventh day, you hallowed it as the most precious of days, drawing our attention to the work of creation.
ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם יספעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ובשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת. חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת.
The top of page 135, we read responsively, "We offer thanks, O God, for this Shabbat, which unites us in faith and hope, for Shabbat holiness, which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories glowing even in darkness, For Shabbat peace, born of friendship and love, we offer thanks and blessing, O God. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. The top of page 137, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amecha Yisrael, u'tefilatam be'ava tekabel, u'tehil ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, shotecha levadecha b'yirah na'avod. On page 139, we find the Hoda'ah blessing. It's a prayer that reminds us to be grateful for all of the blessings that come our way. And on a morning such as this, we may be grateful for the gift of the beauty of nature. If you want to take a look behind you, you want to know what it's like to be inside a snow globe, take a look. There's something beautiful about the snow just gently falling upon the earth. And you might be grateful for the gift that comes when we gather together as community and as family. In the course of these past 2 years, it's something that we can't take for granted, our ability to be here in this moment, whether it is here physically or watching over Zoom or YouTube, rather. Or we might be grateful for the gift of a young man taking his place as an adult within the Jewish community. If you have reason to be grateful this morning, I invite you to say these Hebrew words after each of the English readings on page 139, Modim anachnu lach. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. Modim anachnu lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons. Modim anachnu lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements. Modim anachnu lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression. Modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared. Modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom. Modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. Modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'cha na'eh lehodot. We continue now with the prayer for peace on page 140.
Sim shalom tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Barcheinu yotzreinu kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha. Ki ve'or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Torat chayim ve'ahavat chesed u'tzedakah u'v'racha v'rachamim. V'chaim v'shalom, v'chaim v'shalom. Sim shalom tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu עלינו ועל כל ישראל, על כל ישראל עמך. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני, המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
With these beautiful words of peace still echoing in our hearts and minds, we take this time for silent reflection.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. 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 יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
We're now going to turn in our prayer books to our Torah service, which can be found on page 244. That's page 244 for Seder Kriyat Torah. And Colin knows that the centerpiece of our Shabbat service is when we take the Torah scroll from the Ark and carry it, as he will do, around the congregation to show that it really is something that is for everyone. It's not something that we keep up on the bima behind the doors of the Ark just for the officiants, but Torah and all of its extraordinary stories and lessons are for all of us. And it's meaningful that Colin will be carrying into our congregation one of two Holocaust scrolls that we have here at Congregation Shalom. And this one is over 125 years old and comes from Poland. And it's an impeccably written Torah scroll. Whoever the scribe was truly at the height of their craft. But there's a powerful story behind this Torah that we tell each and every week. As all Torah scrolls and the lessons that reside within, this Torah scroll was much loved by the community that would read from it and study from it and absorb its wisdom. And there was one man who was a part of that group that met every Saturday to worship and study, and they found much fulfillment in the learning of God's word. And it happened that just before the Nazis entered into Poland and occupied that country, initiating the Second World War, that this man had a sense of what might befall the Polish community and the Jewish community. And sure enough, when the Nazis entered the country, he was arrested and was sent to Auschwitz concentration camp, where life expectancy was no more than 2 weeks. But this man was able to live there for several years, witnessing unspeakable horrors, and how he was able to survive was truly a miracle. But prior to his being taken there, he hid the Torah scroll away in a safe place. And after the war, when the camp was liberated and he was free, he returned home and found the Torah precisely where it had been hidden and brought it to Warsaw, where it was used by a tiny remnant of the once so vibrant community that was alive in Poland. And when that community, the remnant, moved to places such as the United States and Canada and Israel and Western Europe, that community was so small that it decided to send the Torah to the United States, which is when Congregation Shalom learned about it and brought it to Milwaukee. And the purpose of it being sent to the United States is that a Torah is meant to be used, especially by young people, so that they can grow with a sense of spirituality and enable the spark of hope and liberty and freedom for all humanity to be kindled and continued. And that means that when Colin carries and reads the Torah amidst our community, it represents not only the hard work he's done and how he's been able to learn from the Torah, but it represents how every young person, no matter their religion, their race, their nationality, can be a source of light unto the world, no matter how much darkness we might see in it. And we are going to be passing the Torah scroll this morning from generation to generation in Colin's family. It's a joy now to call upon his dear grandparents, to call upon Sheldon and Marilyn Felk and Peter and Bev Stickler to come up to the bima, and to call upon his dear parents, Lisa and Nick, and sister Lila, to stand next to Colin. And it's also a joy to call upon our first ark openers, to call upon Liz and Brad Simon to step forward as they have the honor of opening the ark doors. Once again, we are turning in our Siddur to page 244. That's page 244 for Seder Kriyat HaTorah, and we rise now as we meet the Torah.
Ein kamohu va'Elohim Adonai ve'ein kema'asecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechol dor v'ador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitein Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah udevar Adonai mirushalayim Baruch shenatan Torah Torah Baruch shenatan Torah Torah le'amo Yisrael bikedushato.
Zot HaTorah, Colin, as you well know, this is the Torah, and found within it are all of the values that have been held upright by your family for generations. The values of being strong and just, merciful and kind, and all of these values are being placed on your shoulders. And it is a joy now to pass this Torah l'dor v'ador, from generation to generation in your family, to pass the Torah from the generation of your grandparents. To the generation of your parents. And now, Colin, it is being placed on your shoulders where it will remain with good health and much strength. We turn now and face the congregation as we recite the watchword of our faith, the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo Lecha Adonai והגדולה והגבורה והתפארת והנצח והחוד. כי כה בשמיים ובארץ, כי כה בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא לכל ראש. אלך עמדה ליבי, חוסנה ואנה תתעלם. 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 אלך עמדה ליבי, חוסנה ואנה תתעלם.
You may be seated. There are many, many moments in our service that are somewhat choreographed, where we ask you to stand or be seated or to bow. There's a moment where you get to reach. If you want to grab a chumash so that you can follow along in our service, those are the sort of the white and blackish, thicker books that you can find at the back. Or you could just listen. But if you want to follow along in our Torah portion today, which is Tazria from Leviticus, we're on page 464, chapter 13, beginning on verse 43. And it is a joy to call upon dear members of Colin's family to have aliyot, and it's a joy to call upon his dear grandparents, to call upon Sheldon and Marilyn Felkt for our first aliyah. Ya'amdu Shalom ben Binyamin ve'Miriam ben Avram.
Baruch Adonai Varach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher B'Harbanu Mikol Ha'amim V'Natan Lanu Et Torato Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. V'ra'ah hakohen et hanetek beyom hashvi'i. Vehine lo fasa hanetak beor umar'ehu einenu amok min haor v'tihar oto hakohen v'chibes begadav v'taher v'im faso yifseh hanetek beor acharei tehorato v'ra'ahu hakohen v'hine Pasa hanetek beor, lo yivaker hakohen, lase'ar hatzahov tamehu.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet Chayei Olam Natan B'Tachenu Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
Beautiful aliyah, mazel tov to you. It is now a joy to call upon Liz, Brad, Zachary, and Dana Simon, and Jaden Bacharach. Ya'amdu, Ya'afarachol bet Shalom Miriam, the Baruch Moshe, the Yechiel David ben Baruch Moshe, Ya'afarachel, Avad,
Shabbat Shalom.
Batsheva, Bat Baruch Moshe Uyafa Rachel, Binyamin Tuvia Ben Shlomo Uyafa Rachel.
Okay, Baruch, whenever you're ready. Baruch Adonai Varach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Varach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher B'Harbanu Mikol Ha'amim ונתן לנו את תורתו. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Ve'im be'einav amad hanetek v'se'ar shachor semach bo nirpa hanetek ta'or hu v'tiharo hakohen ve'ish o isha ki yiyeh be'or besaram beherot levanot V'ra'ah hakohen v'hinei be'or besaram beherot keherot levanot bochak hu parach pe'or tahor hu.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yesher koach to all of you. That was also a beautiful aliyah. Now it is a joy to call upon Colin's dear parents, to call upon Lisa and Nick Stickler to step forward. And we also have the joy of having Colin be our next Torah reader. So it's a joy to call upon you. Ta'amod, Aliza bat Shalom ben Miriam.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
V'ra'aoto hakohen v'hinei se'et hanega levana adam demet b'karachto v'gabachto kamar et sarat or basar is tsarua hu tameh yitamenu hakohen birosho nigo V'hat sarua asher bo hanega begadav yiyu firomim virosho yiyeh parua v'al safam yate v'tameh yikra kol yemei asher hanega bo Yitma tamehu badad yeshev michutz hamachane moshavo.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Lila, you can come up and join your parents too. Beautiful aliyah and Yesher koach. It is now a joy for me to introduce Colin. It becomes a bar mitzvah. Ya'amod, ya'amod, ya'amod ha-bar mitzvah, ya'amod, Chaim Itai ben Aliza v'Nick. It's with great joy and great fanfare that we call forward Colin Stickler as he becomes a bar mitzvah.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
V'habeged ki yiyeh vo nega sarat beveged semir beveged pishtim vishti va'erev la pishtim velat samer ve'or bechol melechet or v'haya hanega yirak rak O Adam Dam babeged, ova or, ovishti, ova erev, o bechol peli or, negat sarat, hu behare et hakohen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'dochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Yesher koach and mazel tov. All right, Colin, turn to your left. Give your mom and dad and your sister a big hug, kiss. You deserve it, and they deserve it too. So watching, your parents while you were chanting Torah was something special because you can see the pride that's written all over their face. There are some Yiddish words I want to teach you. Just a couple, just two of them. I don't know whether you've heard of them. Have you ever heard of the word nachas? Nachas?
No.
To shep nachas is sometimes when our children or our grandchildren do something that's truly extraordinary. It's like you're bursting with joy. And so in Yiddish we call that shepping nachas, and that's what they get from you when they look at you, doing something so extraordinary as reading from the Torah. But from your parents and from your family, you also get something called yichus, which means that all of the good and all of the wonder that comes from these generations that stand with you and before you, that all of that comes down and trickles into you, right? And you get from them tremendous yichus. All of the good that they've taught you is manifest in moments like these. The Torah scroll is held on what's called two eitzim, right? Two eitzim, these poles that we hold our Torah scroll on. It's much like our parents, the fact that you come from wonderful people, your mom, your dad, their families before you, they uphold all of these values and the goodness that you've just been able to read. And when you continue to conduct yourself as wonderfully as you have today, then I know that they'll continue to shep nachas from you, and you'll be able to continue to absorb all of the yichus from them. It's a joy to stand with you in such moments and to watch you uplift the Torah. And it's now a joy to call upon your mom to uplift the Torah as well, not figuratively, but literally, as we are going to lift and bind the Torah, and Nick and Lila are going to help us dress the Torah. We rise now as we turn to lifting and binding our Torah scroll.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. La 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 Al shlosha devarim Al shlosha devarim Al shlosha devarim ha'olam amed Al shlosha devarim Al shlosha devarim Al shlosha devarim ha'olam amed.
And now Colin is going to read the English translation of his Torah portion.
The priest shall examine him. If the swollen affection on the bald part in the front or at the back of his head is white streaked with red, the back of his head is white streaked with red, like the leprosy of a body skin in appearance, he is among the leprous, he is impure. The priest shall pronounce him impure. He has the affection on his head. As for the person with a leprous affection, his clothes shall be rent, his head shall be left over, and his upper lip shall be covered over, and that person shall call out, impure, impure. The person shall be impure as long as the disease is present. Being impure, that person shall dwell apart in a dwelling outside the camp. When an eruptive affection occurs in a cloth or wool or linen fabric, in the warp or in the woof of the linen or the wool, or in a skin or anything made of skin. If the affection in the cloth or the skin, in the warp or the woof, or in any article of skin is streaky, green, or red, it is an eruptive affection. It shall be shown to the priest.
Good job, Colin. Beautiful reading. And now what we are going to do is we turn to a second biblical reading that we read on the Shabbat. This one comes from, and rather all the Haftorah. It's known as the Haftorah. This one comes from the section of our Bible known as the Prophets. Colin is going to be reading from Ezekiel chapter 45. The prophets weren't merely foretellers, predicting some form of future. Rather, they were forthtellers. They were speaking to our society to make a more just society, one that is more peaceful and that is accessible to all. And so we are privileged to be reading from our Haftorah, which can be found in Ezekiel. And often our Haftorah is a commentary on the Torah portion. The rabbis chose particular Haftorah to do that. And it is always interesting to see what they make of the Torah portion, particularly this Torah portion. That's right. And this one is Shabbat HaChodesh for the new moon.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nevi'im tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'nebiei ha'emet v'tzedek. Kol ha'am ha'aretz yiyu El ha-teruma hazot lanasi be'Yisrael ve'ol hanasi yiyeh ha'olot ve'chanincha ve'hanesech b'chagim uve'chadashim uve'shabbatot b'chol mo'adei Beit Yisrael, hu ya'aseh et hachatat ve'et hamimcha ve'et ha'olah ve'et ha'shalamim lechaper be'ad Beit Yisrael. Ko amar Adonai Elohim barishom be'echad lachodesh Tikach par ben bakar tamim v'chiteta et hamikdash v'lakach hakohen mitam hachatat v'natan el mezuzat habayit ve'el arba Pinot ha'azara lamizbeach ve'al mezuzat ashar hechatzer ha'penimit ve'chein ta'aseh b'shiv'a v'chodesh me'ish shogeh u'mipeti ve'chiparteh et habayit Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim tzadik bechol hadorot ha'el hane'eman ha'omer ve'oseh ha'medaber u'mekayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nevi'im ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu li'kedusha ve'limenucha lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umevarechim otach Yitbarach shimcho beficho chai tamid le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. Colin, take a deep breath. You deserve it. I have to tell you, it's not every day that the cantor takes a seat during the Haftorah, and that is a really wonderful indication of the trust that he has in you. And you are an extraordinary student, an extraordinary young man, and I know that everyone here knows that to be true. We are going to turn to returning our Sefer Torah to the Ark, which can be found on page 256. That's page 256, and I have the joy of calling upon Peter and Bev Stickler to rise and ascend to the Ark as they have the honor of opening and closing our Ark doors. We rise now together as we turn to page 256.
Ki lekach tov natati lachem Torati al ta'azovu Etz chaim hi lama chazikim ba v'tomechea me'ushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadesh chadesh yameinu chadesh yameinu kekedem.
You may be seated, and now Colin has prepared these words on the occasion of his becoming a bar mitzvah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for coming to and for watching my bar mitzvah online today. My Torah portion is Tazria, and it comes from Leviticus. In my Torah portion, priests are asked to help people suffering from spiritual impurity. The affected people had a very strange skin disease, similar to leprosy, but they weren't actually lepers. Rather, a deep spiritual affliction or impurity had manifested in physical ways on their skin. Their hair became discolored and thin. Red streaks appeared on the backs of their heads, and rashes developed. To help these people, the priests conducted exams that did not just focus on the individual's outward appearance. The goal of these ritual examinations was to cure the people of their affliction and reestablish their purity. I find many things interesting about this Torah portion. Upon my first read, I thought it was actually about the skin condition and nothing more. Rabbi Noah explained to me that it is really about so much more. The afflicted people were suffering from an internal issue, but were not physically ill. Rather, their spirits had been damaged. Even as someone is physically fit and super strong, they can still struggle with mental health. When I began to understand the true meaning of this Torah portion, I immediately thought of athletes. I spend a good portion of my time playing sports and watching football and basketball. The players I watch on TV are behemoths, but their minds may not be as strong as their bodies are. Mental wellness and physical fitness are equally important. Coaches train their players in many ways, but I'd argue the best coaches focus on personal wellness. Coaches like Tom Izzo Michigan State's basketball coach, understand the importance of connecting with their players on a personal level. Coach Izzo makes it a point to really know his players and to know what's going on in their lives. Izzo knows that if Max Christie's mind is bogged down, he won't hit his three and will miss his free throws. Two things that require extreme focus. In the words of Ted Lasso, for me, success is not about the wins and losses. It's about helping these young fellas be the best versions of themselves on and off the field. Like the priests, good coaches know the toll mental difficulties and distractions can have on their players. Physical fitness and mental health are two sides of the same coin. When working toward becoming a bar mitzvah, I had to find my grit and mental strength. Life isn't just about how well you perform physically, it's also about your mental well-being. I learned this lesson while preparing for today. I didn't just spend these last few months learning prayers. I also grew as a man. Studying for my bar mitzvah taught me about the importance of determination and perseverance. When I started working with the cantor, I didn't know many prayers. I got discouraged at first, but I stuck with it. I needed to become mentally tough, and I couldn't give up. It's like when I start a swim race. I can train for weeks, but if I don't feel confident when I step up on the block, I won't succeed. Through this process, I have learned so much about myself and what I can achieve. I now understand I'm not just having a bar mitzvah, I am becoming a bar mitzvah. As you all know, sports play a big role in my life. When I was choosing a mitzvah project, I knew I wanted to do something that helped others grow their confidence through sports like I have. Not every kid has a closet full of sport equipment, a fully stocked PE department, or parents who can take them to practices or meets. I teamed up with Cream City Charity to collect gently used sports equipment for schools and boys and girls clubs. When I take the equipment to these places and I see the kids' faces light up, I know they'll feel good about themselves when dribbling their new ball down the court or throwing their new football. As the priest did, I hope their coaches know to look more than just skin deep. By looking beneath the surface, others are able to help us grow. Speaking of people who help us grow, I'm thankful to have a lot of people like that in my life. First, I want to thank everyone who is able to be here in person. I know it's a hard time to travel. I also know many of you are watching online. Thanks for spending your Shabbat morning with us. You have all made today even more special. I want to thank my Nana and Papa and Grandma and Grandpa for all their support over the past 13 years. I know they will continue to love and support me. I want to thank my aunts and uncles for sharing in my mitzvah day. Also, thank you to my cousins, who I have so much fun with. Rabbi Noah, Rabbi Pizlowski, Cantor Perpert, and my tutor Sam have all helped me prepare for today. They taught me the prayers and helped me understand the meaning of becoming a bar mitzvah. I'm happy I've gotten to know them. Finally, I want to thank my parents and my sister, Lila. Lila may not realize this, but she's my best friend, and I can't wait to help her prepare for her bat mitzvah after all I've learned. My dad is an important person in my life. I have so much fun playing sports with him, and he helps me with my math homework, because my mom says she doesn't do math. Speaking of my mom, thank you for not letting me give out when tutoring was hard. If it were not for her, I would not be standing on this beam up before you today. Everyone here and watching online have made this a very memorable day for me, so thanks. Shabbat Shalom.
I think it goes without saying that we are incredibly proud of Colin today. And though I have so much I could say right now, I've often been told that I'm not good at delegating. So I'm going to delegate the presentation of the speech to Nick.
All right. Well, Colin, I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but it's hard to believe you're 13. We remember you bursting into this world extra early, of course. It was 6 a.m., and I told your mom there was no way she was in labor. No way. You were not due for another 5.5 weeks, after all. But you had your own plan for how things were going to happen that day, and you still do to this day. From an early age, all your teachers and coaches sang your praises. Not only are you smart, outgoing, and curious, but you've always looked out for kids who need some extra help. Like the time at swim team a few years ago, when it was Valentine's Day, and there were a number of kids, and of course we were all saying Happy Valentine's Day to each other. But you took the time to walk across the pool and say Happy Valentine's Day to one of the kids with special needs. Now, you thought nothing of it at the time, and you just did it instinctively. But little did you know you made that kid's day, as expressed by her mother to us after swim practice. Your sensitivity and perceptive nature are some of your greatest qualities and will carry you far in life. Everybody has something valuable to contribute, but sometimes they need an act of kindness or encouragement to engage. You're the kind of person that provides that spark, Colin. You're also very adaptable. This may be because we've moved you around so much, from living in Michigan to Florida to now in Wisconsin. You've always found your place. And things like not knowing a lot of people, that's never slowed you down a bit. I remember one of the times we went to a park after a move, and you walk up to the very first kid you saw and said, "Hey, red shirt kid, want to play?" And you've already made a friend. We also admire that you're a dedicated student, friend, and someone who excels at so many things. But beyond your measurable accomplishments, we adore your quick wit. You have always made jokes that adults understand, and you can really work a room. In Colin's world, everything is all fun all the time, and no one can resist your smile. Like the time you were at your aunt and uncle's house for dinner. Maybe you were 4 or 5 years old, and the kids were going around and saying what they wanted to have to drink with dinner. And you can imagine, juice, water, milk, but not Colin. His little head probably barely sticking above the counter. He went ahead and ordered up a vanilla bean frappuccino with extra whipped cream. Now, of course, everybody thought that was the funniest thing they'd ever heard, but it just came naturally to you. Now, while you and your sister have recently started to enjoy quibbling, you two really do make a great team. We hope you both realize how lucky you are to have a built-in best friend. Some of our favorite moments were watching you laugh and have fun together. Of course, that usually was quickly followed up by me becoming a jungle gym, horse, punching bag, or some other form of enjoyment for you that made sure I wouldn't feel any of my extremities for the next couple days. But probably the most important lesson that we've learned over the past 13 years is a bored Colin is never a good idea. You won the Energizer Bunny Award in preschool and have not slowed down one bit. When bored in your younger years, you like to draw on walls and engrave your nightstand. Interestingly enough, though, you usually tried to deny it was you altogether, despite your favorite thing to draw or engrave was your own name. And today you keep busy with swim team and tennis and piano and ninja climbing and all the other things you do. In fact, there's not a whole lot of activities you actually haven't tried at one point in time or another, except organized football, which we thought was too dangerous. Thus, we apologize for putting the kibosh on your dream of playing in the NFL, but we hope someday you'll forgive us. Colin, we love you and are so proud of all you have accomplished. Your mom and I, as well as everybody in this room here today, cannot wait to see what you will do in life. While the possibilities are endless, we absolutely know it will be amazing. Mazel tov.
Lisa and Nick, thank you for those beautiful, beautiful words of blessing to Colin. In our tradition, moments such as these, we say a blessing that had been on the lips of parents for generations. So I'm going to invite Lisa and Nick, if you would like to stand, and Lila, if you would like to stand with them. You've had a hand in making your brother exactly who he is. Colin, if you'd like to rise as well, and grandparents, if you would like to stand, and aunts and uncles and cousins, if you'd like to stand, and friends and family and community, those of you who are here as well, as we recite the Shehechianu blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyemanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Blessed are you, eternal our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us life, who has sustained us, and who has brought us to this very special moment today. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. Colin, this morning, you've joined an elite group, an elite club. You can stand proud as some of the few who have tackled the Torah portion Tazria. You know that this portion you read this morning isn't an easy one. In fact, many rabbis feel that it is the most difficult, most challenging section of the entire Torah. And in some congregations, this is the weekend they welcome a scholar in residence just so Tazria can essentially be overlooked. It's filled with talk of ritual defilement and impurity, grotesque descriptions of skin diseases, bodily afflictions, and even buildings that are sick. But I've also come to love this portion, especially because it's challenging. For we know life doesn't move according to a straight line. It twists and turns as we walk the journey of life and never stops presenting us with challenges. How we rise to meet those challenges truly speak to the nature of our characters and who we are deep down. Colin, I think you're remarkable. Just a few short months ago, you moved to our community. You started a new school, joined a new congregation, began studying in order to become a bar mitzvah, and you did this all amidst a global pandemic. And even more importantly, you did it with inner strength, a trust in your own abilities, a desire to do the best you possibly can, and you did it with poise and maturity that speak to the character of a young man that is wise beyond his years. Tazria speaks, as you shared with us, of the outer nature of our lives, that which is skin deep as a reflection of our inner world, and that is often marked with difficulties. We don't always get to see the inner world reflected on the outside, but in a sense, our actions in the outer world can define us. The fact that your dad and your mom pointed to that moment in which you showed great kindness to a young person at that swimming pool, was it a swimming pool? Is something that indicates really your character. A great rabbi once said, I've always, throughout my life, had respect for people that are extremely intelligent and smart, and as I grew wiser, I started to recognize that what I truly respect in people is their kindness. And the fact that you are able to show that is extraordinary. Though I know we are all through with the discussion of the slap that was heard around the world last week, it's important to note that our outer behavior is often a reflection of the turmoil experienced inside, or how we're feeling inside. I think, and it can be fairly certain, that the two who were engaged in that altercation at the Oscars had something that was going on inside. But sometimes our outer actions can reflect an inner strength as well. What we can say of you, Colin, is that in becoming bar mitzvah, in leading our service, in learning the Torah as you've done, to meet this moment with characteristic dignity, that's a reflection of your inner being. Your success today is a product of your inner fortitude and your neshama, your spirit. I'm not surprised. You can tell that your mom and dad and your sister, too, have that strength of character. And no doubt you're surrounded by people who uplift you and support you and who are cheering you on. The cantor pointed out that this is our Rosh Chodesh. This is the first day of the new month of Nisan, the month of spring. Can't you tell from looking outside? And you traded the beaches for the snow in Wisconsin. But there's something important to think about when we think about a new moon, a new month, which is marked by the new moon. When you look up tonight and you look up into the night sky, you're going to see that it's actually the darkest it is during the entire month. And when we look around us in the world outside, we can see that there is great challenges, and there is some darkness that exists in the world today as well. But when we move into the next day and the next after that, what we'll notice is that there will be a small sliver of light that will appear. And then that sliver of light will grow, and will grow each and every day. That's the same with our lives, too. When we engage in acts and deeds that bring righteousness and goodness to the world, like your mitzvah project, when we make our parents, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles and cousins, family, and our community proud, then what we're doing is we're bringing a little bit more light into the world each and every day. I know that your family has the privilege to watch you grow in that light, just as we'll see this month as we grow in that light as well. So I have a hope and a blessing for you, Colin. Continue to meet these moments of challenge in the way that you've met this one. Rise to every occasion with the dignity and poise in which you've shown today. Your inner self is strong and able. You're a mensch, and even though life never ever moves in a straight line, enjoy the journey of the twists and turns. When you are able to meet those twists with the positivity that you've met these challenges, I'm certain you'll continue with tremendous strength and give your parents the nachas they so rightfully deserve. God has brought you to this moment, Colin. May God ever keep you in good health, with koach and with joy. And let us say, Amen. Now, Colin, if you would come to the middle of the bima, I'm going to say some words that are just for you to hear, and then the cantor and I'll have the privilege of blessing you.
Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha.
May God bless you and keep you.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May God's countenance shine upon you and be gracious unto you.
Yisa Adonai, panav elecha, ve'yasem lecha shalom.
May God always smile upon you, Colin, and bless you with God's choicest of blessings. The blessing of wholeness, the blessing of peace, the blessing of shalom. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Well, Mazel Tov, everyone. We are now going to turn to the concluding sections of our service, and it's a joy to call upon our next ark openers as we turn to Aleinu, which can be found on page 282 in your Siddur. It's a joy to call upon Ben, Shannon, Rob, and Adam Stickler to ascend to the bima as they have the honor of opening and closing the ark. And we also have the joy of hearing Lila, who's going to present a reading during Aleinu. So Lila, if you'd like to come up and stand at the bima as well. Please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'teit gedula le'yotze breshit, shelo asanu kegoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam. Va'anachnu koreim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamelachim hakadosh baruch hu.
May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Loved, each of us, for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand, but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד Ushemo echad, Ushemo echad, Ushemo echad.
You may be seated. We turn now in our Siddur to page 294. That's page 294 as we think of our loved ones who have passed into life eternal. Particularly in our hearts and minds, we are thinking of these dear people who have passed during the period of Shiva and Shloshim, during the past 7 and 30 days. We think of Howie Hirsch, Bella Bornstein, B.G. Karp, Leonard Dunn, Linda Fine, Sherwin Cabins, Milton Kaplan, and Jeff Makovich. In moments such as these as well, we think of loved ones who have walked this earth before us that have led us to this moment. I know that particularly in the hearts and minds of your family, Colin, we are thinking of Tilly and Abe Mendelson, Belle and Ben Felk, Louise and Ford Stickler, and Clara and Norbert Piper. I am certain that they are still smiling down upon you and your dear family with the same love and affection that they did in life. In addition to the names of our loved ones, so too do we think of all those who have died due to war and/or terrorism, all those who've died in defense of this nation and allied nations' ideals. We think of all of those who have passed due to this terrible virus that has stricken our nation and our globe, as well as the virus of racism. We also think of all those who perished during the Holocaust. If you have a name of a loved one for whom it's the anniversary of their passing, or someone who has passed in recent days, and you would find it meaningful to call those names out loud, please do so as I look in your direction. Our griefs and our sympathies are mingled as we turn to words sanctified by memory, words glorified by hope. The Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish, can be found on page 294. We rise together now as one community as we remember our loved ones with these sacred words. Yit gadal v'yit kadash me rabba, v'alma divrach chirute v'amlich malchute, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehe shmei rabba mevorach leolam ulamei amaya. Yit barach v'ishtabach v'it pa'ar v'it romam v'it naseh. V'it adar v'it ale v'it halal shmei de kudesha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, amen. You may be seated. In our tradition, we are taught that those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. We always turn from sadness to joy. And Colin, it's a joy to present some gifts to you on behalf of our community. So you can come on up if you like, and I can present them to you. So the first gift is a gift that you received this morning, which is the certificate of becoming a bar mitzvah, signed by the cantor and the rabbis here at Congregation Shalom. Bears your Hebrew name, and it says that you were called to Torah on this date, the 1st of Nisan in 5782, and that your parsha was Tazria, in case people won't believe you. You can show it to them. But we also have these gifts of a book of our history in the Milwaukee community that you're now a part of. And the book is called One People, Many Paths. And that's true. We are one people with many paths to the future. And we hope that this is a book that you read and treasure, and maybe when they create the new edition, you'll be featured in it. Who knows? And we have the gift also of these 2 canisters. One is a Kiddush cup, and the other is a tzedakah box. And both of these canisters not only represent the goodness that comes when they're filled, but also when you fill these up, they fill you up. When you celebrate sacred moments such as these, it is a product of time. What makes the grapes turn into wine is the idea of time as well. That's what makes it strong and powerful. You put in time in order to make this moment so sacred and special. May all of those next moments do the same. And the tzedakah box is representative of the importance of charity in our lives. And when you fill up this tzedakah box, or when you do acts of righteousness in the world, not only will it fill up this canister, but it will fill up your neshama, your spirit. So I hope that these are gifts that you will treasure as you move forward in your life with the same dignity and goodness that you've displayed to this point. If you'd like to go over to the S tables, and I'm going to call your parents and your sister to go over to the S tables as well, as in just a moment you're going to have the honor of lifting up our Kiddush cups and blessing them, and to uncover the challah, and the cantor will bless that as well. But before we do so, let's conclude our service with closing hymn. What should our closing hymn be, Cantor?
Siman Tov and Mazel Tov, I think.
Perfect.
Works for me.
Good, let's do Siman Tov and Mazel Tov.
Siman Tov and Mazel Tov and Mazel Tov and Siman Tov. Siman Tov and Mazel Tov and Mazel Tov and Siman Tov. Siman Tov and Mazel Tov and Siman Tov. Yehelanu, 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 Olechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Olechol Yisrael. Siman Tov u'Mazel Tov u'Mazel Tov Siman Tov. Siman Tov u'Mazel Tov u'Mazel Tov Siman Tov. Siman Tov u'Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov Siman Tov. Yehelanu.
If you would lift up a Kiddush cup, a symbol of sacred joy, our cup is overflowing with blessings, and let's rise together as the cantor leads us in this timeless blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
L'chaim. And now if you'd like to uncover the challah, how was it, Colin? Didn't like it? Well, that's good to hear. It's important. All right, if you'd like to uncover the challah is a symbol of sustenance and community. Just like the challah is braided, so are our lives intertwined with each other. We draw sustenance from each other. So if you'd like to lift up the challah, and the cantor will sing the blessing as well.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen. B'te'avon, mazel tov, everyone.
Mazel Tov. This ends our bar mitzvah. Yes, you may. Yes. Mazel Tov.
I know that you're meeting for a Kiddush that's going to be taking place in the foyer just through those doors. Please enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy the beauty of this. I know it's surprising to have snowfall in spring like this, but it is really something quite beautiful. And a reflection of the goodness of this moment. It's a beautiful moment that we're all celebrating together. Mazel tov, everyone.